Overview Scrutiny Committee on the 26th of February. I'd like to welcome members of the Community and Police Overview and Scrutiny who decided to join us for the item as it crosses with both committees' interests. So, first I get to apologies for absence.
He's from Councillor Dunn and Councillor Gallagher.
The minute of the meeting, I wasn't there, but those of you that were, are we happy to do the record?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Chair, can I just mention something?
Yeah, yes.
I brought something up at the last meeting. Seemed to be a bit of confusion. And it's about my ask for risk strategy to come to this committee. Now, if we look at terms of reference, page 32, risk strategy is one of the things that we should be overseeing really, and we haven't had it. That's why I made the request. Now, at the last meeting, we talked about detailed reports. I don't think it's detailed report we need to know about, but it's certainly risk strategy is in there.
There's a few issues with regard to duplication between this committee and the audit. I'm not sure that you've got to resolve that with you, so I'll be clarification from you.
Well, it just, I did see it was in, there was some confusion. It's there, it is.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah, good point. If you can clarify that. Right. So the also the minutes. So we'll go to disclosure of members' interest. Okay. Board plan cabinet decisions. 7 to 18. Anything like that?
No, okay. That's all the time for
Okay.
Chair,
Oh, sorry.
excuse me, sorry, I'm on the blind side, I apologise. Page 16, 17, I'm confused, and that's probably a very simple, rational explanation. But where you've got housing regeneration report, the 12th of March 2024, it's repeated on page 17, but it's now titled 9th of April. It's exactly the same word for word. So I think it must just be a typo or whatever. I think that's the term they use, or as an explanation, which I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
But can I ask, Chair, and it's rather similar to what Malcolm's just raised, on the housing regeneration report, 12th of March or 9th of April, take your choice. The second one is to place on hold lettings for empty homes and any homes that become empty in the addresses listed within this report. Now, in fairness, that report will go to Cabinet. I'm not a member of Cabinet, so I don't know what you're talking about. This, but I don't know what the report is. And I'm quite sure 67 ward councillors would like to know which houses are not going to be used, occupied, or given to people when you have a waiting list, the length of this building easily, of wanting a home. And yet we're being told, and I know it hasn't gone to Cabinet yet, but is there an opportunity that we can get a copy of that report without me having to wait for the minutes to come out to read them in April?
Well, the reports will go on the website before the cabinet meeting. There was the,
Yeah.
but we can ask you beforehand.
absolutely. The reports will be published a week before the cabinet. So it is possible that I could circulate the link to members.
The first when is it? It doesn't be. I'm guessing it is 9th of April.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it is a typo. There are two separate reports, but they are different. So
Which is which? Which is the one that's got this point in that Alex is concerned about? Do we know?
I'll confirm when I get to the work programme, Chair.
Right. Okay. But we'll come back to that at the work programme.
Thanks, that's appreciated, Chair and Sean. I really think members, and not everybody, this was raised constantly at full council last week. If you think members have got nothing else to do but to wait for a report to come on the website, we all live in Cloud Cuckoo land. It's not true. Send it to us and we'll read it. And that's the point. Instead of searching, why should we have to search for something when it's as important? Is that, and I'm really concerned because it is something you hear with great regularity full information is not being shared with all 67 councillors.
Well, I thought we did have another meeting before that cabinet meeting in April, no?
Well, in March,
A
yeah.
meeting in March, so when, if members wanted, we could maybe have that paper in our March. Just to be- We're happy with that, sorry.
Chair, but I get my colleague's point, and my other colleague's point. You know, we're getting these papers very late, and we are a scrutiny committee, and therefore we should be scrutinising these in depth. Any questions that we may feel we need to ask prior to it going to the cabinet, then I think we should be able to have that entitlement.
Well, that was the idea.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have a slightly different view. I think the what we have moved towards is less pointless pre-scrutiny and more. So this report, we're not actually. I mean, Alex, you said that we were being asked to approve it. We're not actually being asked to approve it. This item on the agenda is a list of things that the cabinet will be making decisions about, which is there to inform us and to let us know what's coming down the road. So if we as a scrutiny committee feel concerned about any of those items on this report, and you do feel concerned about one of them, it does exactly what's happening now. It highlights the fact that this is coming, and it gives us an opportunity to ask for the report to be brought here if we feel there's a point in pre-scrutinising it. But what we need to be careful of is that we don't just revert to pre-scrutinising everything. And if we're honest, what's been happening over the last few years has been largely pointless, because I haven't seen many cabinet decisions changed because of pre-scrutiny. What we'd be better off doing is focusing on how effective decisions are, or trying to get ahead of the game, way ahead of the reports being produced and coming to cabinet, so we can influence the sorts of things that cabinet are actually making decisions about, rather than just sort of making a few anodyne recommendations about each cabinet report as it hits their meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Sean, I'm terribly sorry, but I just don't agree with you, Councillor Oliver, because I think that we really need to scrutinise. That's what we're here for. We know the savage cuts that's going to be taking place. We know the budget that's savings here, there and everywhere. And I think we need to be looking at these things. I mean, there's things slipping through the net, like energising Blythe, one deep dive into Bow Street. There's things that we haven't been privy to that's decided before we haven't have a look at it. At one time, you know, and when I was on the former scrutiny meeting, we used to look at all these in depth. And I think that's vitally important. I mean, you know, I know you because you're in power, but really, but those were the days that we felt as though we had a purpose sitting in this committee. So therefore, I think that we should be starting to look at the fact that we are a purposeful committee, and therefore we need to scrutinise properly, because you're dealing with lots and lots of people that we represent money, and seeing if they're getting value for money. And you are in the best programme, as everybody keeps telling us, but our members are probably getting best value if we can't scrutinise these items on the agenda before they go to committee. One-sided, may I add, cabinet, and then therefore it's not balanced when it gets to that stage. Terribly sorry. That's my rant for this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll and then.
Can I just put my tuppence worth in? Last week, we were given a large number of papers to go through for the meeting. Several times in that were reports which had gone back to members, and it just said members. What it didn't say was some members, and those reports only went to cabinet. Now, you can't say all those reports came to members when it's only going to cabinet. And I think, just to back up my colleagues here, then we should be able to, if we want to see something highlighted, we should be able to bring it here.
Yes, then that is the point Nick was making.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think that's the whole point of having this report on every scrutiny committee agenda, is it's to highlight to us what's coming, so that we can call a report to these committees if we feel it's necessary. Just a quick point on the, you mentioned energising Blythe and Bow Street. There is a really comprehensive section on the council's website about the whole energising Blythe programme. The town board minutes are published there, and all all of the plans for Bow Street, which has actually been and gone, are on the site. So the information is all there. So the idea that people aren't sharing it is, I just think it's not accurate, because that, you can go on the website now and you'll see more information that you could possibly ask for.
We're straying into a sort of general discussion. I think we should probably move on. But I think the mood of the members is the report that Alex mentioned, that we bring that to our next committee as a bit of item of pre-scrutiny.
I've just checked the forward plan, and it actually is on twice. It is on for March and April.
Well, if you find out, or maybe suggest to do it in April, then we can.
So if it does come in March, it would post.
Obviously, it's good, but we can do post-scrutiny, that's part of the new role. But we can look at it, whether they passed it or not. And we'll see whether we agree with it, or as part of the new scrutiny, we can come back to, we'll bring this in 6 months and see how it's worked.
Yeah.
But no, I think we should bring it at some point.
The council agreed the new scrutiny function was about scrutinising cabinet decisions.
Yeah.
And that's why when we circulate the forward plan now, we do it in 2 parts. We do it. First part is the decision the cabinet have made, and whether or not the committee want to examine them further. But also to highlight issues going forward, so that members can bookmark or work program in future as well.
Okay, right. I think you've written long enough, so we'll go on to item 5, broadband update. Oh, sorry.
I didn't look at it before, but the actual minutes of the meeting held on 29th of January, I was actually present.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I'm not minister.
Right. Can we?
So if I get my knuckles wrapped around it, I've done anything wrong. I was there. I did sit, but I'm not a minister. So could somebody add the?
Yes, can we have into the list? Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Moving on. So yes, broadband. So there's an overview of the. There's a pursuit cabinet member here for the.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper is basically, there's 2 parts to it. The first part is an update on broadband connectivity in Northumberland. The second part relates to the digital switch. So I'm just going to give a brief summary, then I'm going to pass over to Phil again, and we're going to kind of add a bit more detail to it. The headline of the paper is that we've made good progress in the last 12 months. Closing the gap that existed between broadband connectivity in Northumberland and the national picture. Particularly noticeable in the figures for ultrafast, which is the premises that can access broadband at 100 megabits per second or more. Then you'll see in the paper 6.4. This has risen from 19.6% of premises in 2022 to over 68% here. That which represents a 240% increase. In the same period, nationally saw a 20% increase. So this shows that this really demonstrates the catching up that we've had to do in Northumberland, because we were quite a bit behind the national picture in 2022. Also worth noting, Northumberland now has fibre to the premise available for 69.2% of premises. Which is actually more than the national average. So national average is 63.4, and in Northumberland we are 69.2. So whilst this is all positive, we've still got a number of premises in our more rural communities, pardon me, that are unable to access good broadband speeds. And you'll see in the paper in point 6.3, the number of premises with no access to broadband or with access to speeds below 2 megabits per second has only dropped by 43% in the last 2 years. And that translates to about 1%, about 2,000 premises in Northumberland. So we're working with BDUK along with communities and with large and small suppliers to help address this through things like national programmes such as Project Gigabit, and Sylvia's going to talk a little bit more about that. Also through gigabit vouchers, our wide area network, and other local interventions such as the Northumberland top vouchers, which again is referenced in the paper. In addition to the broadband feature, we want to update members on the digital switchover of telephone lines. This is a telephony industry-led initiative to replace the old public switch telephone network with modernised digital infrastructure, and the aim is to migrate everybody by 2025. We're working with telephony providers to help them identify vulnerable customers. Those that may require additional support with the transition. We're also working with parish councils to give support and guidance. We've printed leaflets, so there should be a leaflet actually in front of you. These are example leaflets away from the council tax letters. And also we've been dropping these off in libraries and sports centres just to help raise awareness and to signpost people to the appropriate support. So that's kind of a very brief overview of the items in the paper. So do you want to add some more detail around Project Gigabit specifically?
So Project Gigabit for Northumberland was one of the first places to go live with the procurement supplies. So we've got we refer to Type A, which is Northumberland, which is ticking on quite nicely. Type B has been problematic and for our purposes has been very frustrating because it's led by BG UK, as I'm sure that you're aware. The procurement was long drawn out. It had several stops and starts because of it was legal questions asked about it from another supplier. So that pulled it back by 6 months or so. And then we were waiting for an announcement from BG UK to say who the supplier was who won the contract. It was actually Fibrous, who then said that they were no longer able to take that forward. So that is frustrating because in fact we've had 2 years where we just haven't been able to move forward on the promises that we know that we need to do work. Because as Chris has said, you know, some of the stats we've got are fantastic, but if you live in or represent a constituency that isn't in the areas where they've got full fibre, you know, those stats don't make any difference to you. So what it's meant now is that we've actually gone back to where we were before the procurement exercise, when actually I know that I felt on the team that we were doing quite nicely because we're working with local suppliers. We've got really good relationships with those suppliers. The vouchers were working well. And it was running okay, and then of course everything stopped because the vouchers were paused. So really, in effect, the vouchers now have been paused for 2.5 years. So what BG UK have said to us now is that those vouchers, they're going to open up what they refer to as intervention areas. So that they're in discussions now with the main suppliers who they think will be interested in applying for voucher projects. We know that Openreach are interested, Alcom are interested, and Barn are interested, and I also think they're still talking to some of the smaller suppliers as well. So whilst that is in some ways a setback because we have had that period where we haven't been able to move forward, for my mind there is a positive slant to that because it means that instead of it being completely led by BT UK, we do have such good relationships, particularly with Alcom, because they're already, you know, they have been working for some time in Northumberland. They're very flexible, very adaptable, but they're also working with Comsworld, who won the WAN contract. So they've got an awful lot of that network there already. So Barn, we did have some issues with Barn over the last couple of years because a lot of their projects had sort of faltered. They were heavily impacted by the fact that the vouchers had been paused, but they're working really well now. We've seen some of the work that they've done in Beresford, and they're moving up across the country. They've just had another 2 large projects agreed by BG UK. So moving up to Kirk Wellington and Campbell, Wellington area. So that's great. So the position that we're in at the moment is that BG UK are spending time looking at that because the suppliers have been asked to put projects forward. They've done that, and BG UK are working through those projects, looking to agree them, looking to see where there's any gaps, and we'll be working with BG UK on that as well, because as you can imagine, been on the team quite some time now, so I have got the usual suspects that I do talk to the UK about on a regular basis. So, yes, it's a negative that Vibros have pulled out of that, but I think that there is a positive to be looked at because there is work already ongoing, and we're going to be working with the suppliers that we've always worked with in the past. So,
Members, any questions? Concerns?
Couple of quick ones, really. I've got some of your pink lines. I've got about voucher schemes. I've got some of the pink lines in my ward. So it's the first I've heard of it. So if you've got any promotional material, if you've got any things, can you share it so we can get this message out as well?
sorry, what is your board?
Badleton West.
Badleton West. Okay, yeah, we can. I mean, some of this hasn't been agreed yet, you know, with the UK. So as soon as because obviously what I want to see as quickly as possible is some sort of plan. And once we've got that plan, then we can be looking at doing some promotional material on them.
As long as we can, you know, get it, share it, let people know what's going on. Now, my other question is more general, but you know, a few years ago we had Storm Arwen hit. I had a village knocked off without electricity for 4 days, which basically renders these things hopeless. Whereas a landline has its own built-in supply, so they would have at least had a telephone. So, you know, is any work going on to like equate that problem somehow?
So, I mean, that's consistent with feedback and complaints we've had from lots of communities that have concerns around the move to digital. Telephony providers are putting in power backup systems where there are vulnerable residents. Now, different telephone providers have different criteria in terms of who's vulnerable and who isn't.
Yeah.
But it is a telephony industry-led kind of initiative, and it's their responsibility to provide kind of contingency power supplies for those that need it.
The problem is, you talk about vulnerable, but you know, for me, if you have a whole village just loses its electrical supply because of a storm, because of a natural occurrence that you can't foretell, then that whole village is vulnerable.
So we're also talking with civil contingency officers or other minds around other options that we can help with in terms of the council officers. So exploring things like Starlink. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is a satellite-based system. They can offer connectivity where if mobile masts are knocked down or there's no power to the mobile masts, then a mobile satellite could provide an alternative contingency, but those need to be tested. So they're the sort of things that we're looking at doing, but we are aware that, you know, it's a concern from many residents.
So would that just be a dongle thing or something?
Well, it shouldn't be. It should actually just be connected to, just as you would connect to home broadband, you would just connect to a different wireless network, essentially, provided by Starlink. But that's not the only contingency. That there are other options. I think backup power generation is probably the primary contingency that we'll be looking at.
There's a lot of work going on as well with CAN, you know, Community Action Northumberland, because they've got their warm hubs or they've got community hubs where they've got photovoltaics, you know, there's grants for photovoltaics on the roofs of these buildings, and they'll be used for emergency centres as well, so that people are put off, that they'll be able to go to the phone and at least be able to, you know, charge a mobile phone or something like that. But I think that the main thing for us is to make sure that everyone is aware that we need to do something, because as Chris is saying, it's not led by the council, it's led by by BT primarily, and we understand the reasons for that, because as a team we get lots of complaints about our telephone lines. You know, we know that they're old and they're damaged, or they're always damaged when there's windy conditions or when it's raining and things like that. So there is a lot of work to do there, but it's just trying to make sure that everyone knows, and I know that someone else within our team is doing a lot of work with councils to get that message out, but it's just making sure that everyone is aware, because the worry is, and we are getting complaints from people where they have been switched over, and in some cases they've been unaware until the engineer has come and changed their phone over. So we do have contacts within EE and with Virgin that we can speak to in those circumstances. But it's just making sure, it's that, making sure that people are aware that there's going to be that change and to be prepared for it. Because we all know that a lot of the times that these phone calls to people who are vulnerable will be as call centre. And do people on a call centre have time to start explaining to people now, are you sure you understand, that this means that you won't have a phone that will break in power cuts? So even if it's just making sure, that my mums and my dads and, my old neighbours, people like that are all aware that that's what they need to do. Because quite often I'll have complaints from people, but it's on behalf of an elderly relative or an elderly neighbour. So it's just trying to get.
Well, they're the ones that feel fear with modern technology,
It's definitely
it just makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, some of the suppliers and certainly some of our smaller suppliers, Bond in particular, are looking at having battery backups for people who are vulnerable. It's making sure that people are aware that if they feel that they are concerned about not being able to have access to a phone, that they can buy them. Obviously, there is a cost to that. They're about very £80 to get these battery backups for phones.
Yeah.
But if they're not vulnerable, but they feel that they need that there are options for them like that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Nick Gregg.
Thank you. So great progress overall, and obviously the county as a whole has got a lot more. But obviously, as you yourself said, the picture is very mixed. And if you live in Blythe Valley, you've got 91.8% of people who've got access to gigabit. If you're in Hexham, it's only 33.7%. So the picture is different. So what? There's sort of two areas of question. First of all, on the main procurement that you've explained has stalled and effectively it says on the BD UK website that it's ended that procurement and they're going to start it again at some point and it may look different. Is there any idea at all of the timescales on that? And then the second, sorry, what do you want to actually?
Yeah, I'll answer that because I've forgotten what you said. So it's going to have to be done pretty quickly. What they're talking about is BD UK hope to get the projects that the suppliers are submitting now. They hope to get those signed off by the end of March because the vouchers, as we've always known in the past, the vouchers only last for a year. So they have a year in order to deliver that project. The main concern we've got at the moment is that BD UK are saying that the voucher scheme itself ends in March 25. So there's only a year. Now, that is already something that I've spoken to other councillors and I'd probably like to raise with our local MPs, and you might want to do that.
Yes.
And I would really appreciate your support on that because it hardly seems fair that we did the procurement was 2 years long. The vouchers were paused all of that time, so it was a 3-year voucher scheme, and now BD UK are turning around and saying, well, yeah, here's the projects that we've agreed, but actually you've got to get it done because we're closing the scheme at the end of March next year. Now they're saying that they will look at that, but we haven't got anything. From the private. That would be certainly something that we would like councillors and MPs to raise with these people. So pretty quickly, I think we'll see things moving.
There's two items. The main contract, but in the meantime, in terms of the broad, so when you go on the BD UK website and look, so I did it this morning in terms of my own ward. Can we set up? There used to be a postcode checker, and you used to be able to say, put in your postcode and it would say, yes, here are the suppliers. What it's got now is the northeast as one sort of big blob, and you can't actually tell which wards and which postcodes within. Do you have a map? Do you have a list of those yet, or?
There is a list, but it changes on a regular basis because, as you can imagine, BD UK behind the scenes are doing a lot of work to try and iron out these, I suppose, the definitive list of the premises that need cover, and that isn't finalised yet.
So as a councillor then, could I try and generate some interest in the voucher scheme in my own ward by writing to everybody and putting an article in the local magazine, getting people to sort of offer.
I would hang fire at the minute, Nick, until
Right.
we can see that these projects have been agreed. Because as I say, I know that Barn are putting projects in, Openreach have expressed an interest in quite a few areas. Alcon have as well.
Right.
So I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks we'll know when those areas have been agreed. I'll get in touch with you then, Nick, if there's areas that are covered.
And on your wider point about needing support, can I suggest that the sort of chairs of these two committees perhaps write to BD UK and just give you some support, and we'll see if we can get the MPs in the rural. I mean, obviously, I think if Wansbeck and Blythe Valley are pretty good, but Berwick and Hexham, as is true of all rural areas across the country, it's harder to build, so it gets done last. But I think we've seen in the past the people that shout loudest get served first, and
That would be really
So-
helpful.
okay.
Well, I'll take up that proposal then, so Nick and I'll work on a draft letter.
We'll contact you to see what you want us to say.
To Cassio and make sure it says what I want it to say first.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it was Alex next.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. It's three very quick points. One, it's interesting what everybody has to say because I really don't have a clue what you're talking about.
That's being very frank.
Oh. I mean, I use Facebook a lot, but I still don't understand it. So how Chris and Sylvia and the rest of the team understand this and the different people I talk to, massive admiration for you, massive. Mark and made some points, Chair. And these have been raised regularly with parish and town councils. And can I say the former chairman of NALC, we asked Chris if he would be our guest speaker last October at our AGM. And the questions you're asking today were the same questions that Chris was asked in October. So I would say to you, if it helps at all, Chair, if you go onto the county's website and look for NALC, you'll actually see Chris's full presentation. Once again, NALC were proud to lead, but I'm over the moon that county councillors can follow. It was very, very good. But I took the opportunity at that meeting, Chair, and I thank Chris, because the town and parish councils are a lot wiser about what's happening in their areas, especially with the digital changeover, than they ever were. And that's from back in October. My final point, Chair, very briefly, is at that meeting, I took the opportunity to bring to Chris's attention, not very far away from the venue with Boomer Son, was an isolated, totally forgotten community called the Showman's Guild. Many in here will have met members of the Showman's Guild, and they'll know how, just to run their business, how much they need broadband, filling in forms and papers, licenses, etc., etc. And of course, they all have children. And during COVID and since COVID, when the kids went home, they didn't go home to a laptop or an iPad to do their work because they had no connectivity. Guess what? That man there in Sylvia, and in April, Openreach are coming into that site and providing connectivity for over 100 people who would never have got it. I think that exemplifies the excellent workforce that is available in this county. And that is probably the best example I've come across. So much so, Chair, sometimes your words can be futile. I actually gave it a shout out last week in the staff news and thanked them publicly. That's why I took the opportunity, Chair, through you, to do it to this committee. And perhaps with some of the waffle that I've said may raise a question from others. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I think we'll have obviously minute those comments, and you are aware of the Showman's Guild. They're a vital part of our Northumberland heritage. So
Yeah.
it's good. Nick.
I need to get my head around what I can do to improve connectivity in my ward, which is Hunsdon. I knew it was quite poor, but I didn't realise it was the worst in Northumberland until I read this. So I've got a few questions. One is, and I don't understand this as well as I would like to. So one question is, paragraph 8 is about project gigabits, and paragraph 10 is about gigabit vouchers. So you've explained that Project Gigabit is struggling, but I also know that BAR, which is a gigabit voucher scheme, is doing very well in my ward. So can you just explain the difference between Project Gigabit, paragraph 8, and gigabit vouchers, paragraph 10?
Yeah, jump in.
Right.
So actually, the gigabit vouchers are part of Project Gigabit, is the truth. The Project Gigabit Type A, Type B that you hear us talking about, they're large procurement exercises. So it was a way in which central government aimed to expedite connectivity to non-commercially viable areas or rural areas. So they would fund through a big contract with a single supplier to connect, 12,000 properties or something in that region in Type B. Whereas the vouchers are the more kind of tactical approach to smaller groups, smaller communities, but they're all part of the same project. The point we're making earlier on, still doing we've seen a contract falling through, because that's fallen through. They're looking to kind of revert to the voucher only basically, which means they'll be a lot more tactical in how we fulfill broadband needs. Sylvia now to see if that was accurate or not. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so. I'm pleased you jumped in, actually. Excellent, what a assist there. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. No, that's and it is very confusing. Sometimes when I respond to people who complain, I'm aware that when I'm trying to explain it in an email, I'll read it back and think it's not when you speak to it, but yeah, it is difficult for people to get their heads around it. And actually, prior to Project Gigabit, we helped about it then. It was just, the sort of thing that they.
I think the message for me, probably for everyone, is to support the voucher schemes, which are currently operating and any which come along in the future. Yeah.
And it's the suppliers who run the vouchers, it's the government provide the funding. I think that's probably part of the confusion with the gigabit vouchers, because people think they're going to get the voucher or that the money is going to be paid into their account, whereas that isn't the case. It's the suppliers who claim the funding from the government.
But in terms of a viable project, it's useful to have demand from the community, so that suppliers absolutely then build the project around a particular community because they know they've got demand.
That's right, because the suppliers need to know that the demand is there, because strangely enough, there are some communities who actually aren't interested. So yeah, they need to know that demand is there. So yeah, don't worry, but we will be in touch with you to help us.
Okay, thank you. My second question was about paragraph 9 about Northumberland Council 1 wide area. So it explains that there's a large social value element, and that this network is going to pass 120,000 premises, and I got the impression that it's not only going to be connecting council buildings but also homes as well. And there's a map on page 25 of our report with pink polygons on, and there's a polygon over part of my ward. So could you explain how WAN fits into the picture and whether it could help people in my ward to get broadband?
Yeah, I'll attempt to then conclude. The wide area network is a contract that we agreed with provider ComsWorld to connect 138 of our house sites. In order to do that, they need to put fibre in the ground or cross poles, and it's largely in the ground. And to do that, they're building a backbone, if you like, from Blythe up to Berwick of new fibre. So 260 kilometres of fibre that's going to go on the ground that wouldn't otherwise exist. So what that does is, from a social value perspective, is that makes some of the more rural areas more viable for some of the smaller providers, the likes of Alcom, who previously wouldn't be able to connect a rural community because there was no backhaul. And so backhaul is basically how you connect to a spine, to a kind of an existing fibre structure. So that spine that's going to go between Bedland and Blythe, that's what's really opening up those kind of opportunities that wouldn't exist, that wouldn't be. But the one contract itself won't be responsible for connecting properties. That it's just a dependency, if you like.
Okay, so one is going to support the project. One will support other schemes by providing this spine.
It's like an enabler, really.
Yeah. So the final question, if I may. So why are there pink polygons quite a long way away from the blue spine on this map? Why is there a pink polygon over part of my ward? Is one actually going to be of any help to Western Northumberland?
So that, and I would need to look in the data, but my take on that is, my understanding of that is that there are sites nearby, so council sites nearby, either a tourist information site, a sports centre, something like that in the region that will be connected. Therefore, it'd be easier for us to branch off from that network. Again, it becomes more commercially viable where otherwise it wouldn't be.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Dale.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report. I don't know if any of you have been through all this, but it can be very difficult. First of all, I would like to say how exceptionally good the staff have been here, both Sylvia and Chris, because it hasn't been easy. And actually from the onset, when I had an area where we had a company coming in and council were great. We had events so people could come and sign up, so we could get the vouchers down, etc., etc. And 2 areas were decided, and then the government or BDUK suddenly stopped the voucher system, and everything went up, as you know. It became terribly difficult, and of course by then everybody's expectations were, oh great, we're going to get it, we're going to get something. And people didn't quite understand that actually businesses who were going to roll it out hadn't been paid. So the start of, so having sold a massive picture and it was going to be great, all of a sudden everything stopped. So people's frustrations got so, it was amazing. And actually, I have to say what Sylvia's put through, I've had it, everybody, and Chris, has been quite difficult because people's expectation is the government is going to do this. It's not happening. And people were signed up to everything else. Anyway, through perseverance, through working with, I don't know, I've been with BDUK, DM, CMSs, letters, hard letters, everybody. They have delivered at last. And that's to say thank you very much once again to the team, because now the vouchers are out again, so they can get on. But not only that, if you look at Cramlington, Cramlington is a new town, so all their infrastructure is very new and very sound. One area, Stocksfield, the infrastructure goes back to goodness knows what, when the first telephones were invented. And it has been so difficult because everything is out of date, you know that, Nick. So, and we know that because all our telephone lines are terribly poor. And that's why BT, you know, they're not going to go and develop areas where their lines they know are difficult because it's harder and it's more expensive for them. So this has gone on and on and on. Anyway, 2 weeks ago, I got my first people online and he was dead and he got 1,000. I can't remember, it's elation. It's been absolutely brilliant. And now it's rolling out. And hopefully the operators who must have spent millions and millions on actually laying and putting in the connections are going to get paid something because they only get paid when they get people connected. So it is taking time. I think we've all been through tears, pulling our hair out and everything else. But now the government's come back with the voucher system again, which is absolutely fabulous. So I'm working with some of the companies who actually neighbour onto my areas to pick up those lines outside, which can be connected, so connected villages and things like that. And so there is a conversation going on, which is great. However, where I live, I get nothing. So we do have problems, but I don't whinge, and I've got everything possible. But I have to remember that there are people way out in the middle of nowhere, whether it be up in the north of Northumberland, the east, west of Northumberland. But those are the ones that we really need to look at, because, you know, getting, making sure that they have got digital contact connection is very important, especially for elderly. So I have to say thank you. You've been working hard on that, but once again, it's not going to be easy because these things are all so slow. Anyway, can I just say thank you, because it's people's ideas about getting a service now doesn't actually always happen. And I think the staff officers have put up with people getting quite aggressive and quite cross, and they know better when they don't know at all what's going on. And it's very difficult to say, well, we don't want to blame so-and-so. We could, but we don't. So nobody gets blamed. We're all just working together to make things work and happen for the benefit of everybody. Does that make sense about no blame going anywhere?
Thank you very much, Councillor Dale.
I'd like to say one last point. I think one of the things that we do need to make people aware of is that not everyone will get full fibre. You know, there will be that small percentage. And that's why Chris was saying, you know, we are looking at other alternatives, whether it's a hybrid of full fibre and wireless, or whether it's Starlink. So yeah, just to, again, you know, it's expectations, and isn't it? You know, that we need to make sure that everyone we can think that we will get full fibre. That will be so positive.
Can I just now say thank you, because I think it's so important that people don't promise the world, and especially those people who are way out, you know, to know that actually you are doing something and you know they're there and you're going to try and meet what they require.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you very much. I think my ward is one of the Cramlington wards, which is in the very top. So thank you. I think you've been laying down lots of, I think the Virgin was doing lots of work in the area. I think basically you're building a super motorways so that information can be shipped across. Okay. I understand. And also I'm very pleased to know that council is topping up 2,500 for every 4,500. This is almost a 55% for every £1 that comes, we put 55p. So that is a real good value for our council tax, I would have thought. Now, my main question is, I understand when you're building motorways, when there are few takers for a few cars, there's no point in doing it. As a result, the suppliers will be hesitant. I think you answered partly my question when you responded to Anne's latest remark, that you cannot guarantee that every place will get fiber optics, but something like a hybrid. So the objective is to make sure everybody is connected in one form or other. If not fiber, if it'll be hybrid or something like that. So how do you prioritize, how did you prioritize? How did you choose Cramlington? We should do it. Is it because existing infrastructure or demand, or how do the suppliers go about prioritizing which areas they will do first compared to this one? And what is the time length to fulfill the objective of every part, every small part in Northumberland will be connected, will achieve the connectivity, either full fiber or some hybrid?
Two questions there. And so I think that on your first point, or your first question around prioritisation, that's largely dictated by the suppliers themselves. How profitable it's going to be, I guess. It's a commercial venture.
Because the areas you're talking about are commercial builds, so they're not funded, they don't need the government funding. So they're easy to do because, you know, they're heavily built up urban areas, so cheap and quick to do. As I often say, you know, particularly in Anne's area where it's been a long, hard slog to get it done. If it had been cheap and easy and quick to do, Openreach would have done it, you know, years ago when they went around that area. So, yeah.
South East Northumberland
Yeah.
is really well served, I think.
Yeah.
It's the broadband and others less so, it's going to be viable. Your second question, the timeline.
Yeah, timeline, yeah, thank you.
So Project Gigabit, the aim, it was 2030, wasn't it?
2030.
2030 was everyone could have gigabit connectivity, so not necessarily fiber, gigabit capable, which is a kind of 1,000 megabytes per second.
Yeah, so which means we don't need to worry too much about the worst, at least, and because it's constantly changing, you know, top 5. So that's, you know, it'll all be sorted out. Come 2030. Yeah.
I think again, it's about managing expectations, you know. that
Yes,
people think
yes.
They're getting a poorer version of broadband if it's not full fibre. But, you know, everyone thinks they should have full fibre, but just because it isn't full fibre to their house, but it's a hybrid version or it's a Starlink or
Yes.
whatever it is we can do for them,
Yeah.
it's still going to be, you know, enough for their needs.
That's right, from to the house, the last mile connectivity, they call it, which is what makes a
Yeah, it
big
could be a
difference.
wireless connection, it could be a satellite connection, because some people will still think back to when I joined the team 2016, where satellite was just really bad. You know, there was a long latency. It just wasn't a very good option. Whereas now you've got Mr. Musk who's doing all sorts of wonderful things. So
Just one last point I'll just add on there is that I think you're absolutely right. Like, not everyone will get full fibre. Nor will everyone need full fibre. Most people actually 50 megabits.
Yes.
Or most people do, most households currently. Now, as technology changes and we might get to 8K TV streaming and things like that, then the demands might be higher, but currently slower speeds are sufficient.
Yeah, just a quick point and a quick question. So, I mean, we've talked about a lot about houses today, but of course we mustn't forget that this is also about businesses, and there are some fairly significant businesses in rural parts of the county who are really hampered by the fact that they don't have access to decent broadband, and would actually be better businesses if they did. So, and you're aware of that, and so that's why we need to keep lobbying. But just on the government website, there are 8 companies listed as accredited for the Northeast blob in terms of voucher schemes. We Fibre is not one of those. They've been active in my part of the county. They seem to have disappeared. Are they out of the picture now? They were, because they were leafleting in Corbridge.
yeah, I don't think We Fibre will be interested in doing any more with vouchers.
I'll stop ringing them then.
Yeah. I'm not very happy with them at the moment. We try to have monthly calls with all of the suppliers working in the area. Everyone's really good except for We Fibre. They cancel, and then Thursday's meeting they just didn't even dial in. So I do continue to hassle them, but I think again, you know, coming back to Anne's thoughts, that I read something the other day where it likened the big rush that we had with when Project Gigabit first started, and there was about 100 suppliers all registered with BT UK to supply broadband into Northumberland, and they likened that rush of suppliers getting on the fibre the fibre bandwagon to the gold rush, and that was the perfect to say, you know, because it was like that, everyone thought it'd be really, really easy. We'll get lots of money from the government, we'll have lots of investment. And actually what's happened is some of these smaller companies, and I think We Fibre are one of them, Fibrous was another, where the investors have suddenly gone, hang on a minute, this is costing an absolute fortune, and we can't see any return at the moment, because as Anne was saying, they don't get the money until BT UK even do that audit. You know, they have to have signed up and they're connected. That is a long road to put all that money forward before they see any money coming back.
They were voucher chasers, really, weren't they? Some of them,
definitely.
Voucher chasers.
Yeah.
I like that phrase.
Sorry, yeah, no, just I was going to say, actually, the first time when the first person was actually connected, BD UK were there the next day to check. Actually, the speed was what they said it was going to be, etc. And the other thing is, which I think, going on to you, what you were saying, Nick, I have concerns that there aren't that amount of companies who are now interested in rolling it out because it's so difficult, and you've got to have a lot of finance behind you to take on the work, because, and therefore the smaller ones. I've had some not in my ward, but next door, which have all pulled out, haven't gone anywhere because they've sort of seen that they have to put the money forward. When you talk about putting money forward, you're talking about a lot of money, and they haven't got the payback too late. So, you know, you've had to battle with that too, which I think, you know, I commend for all the work you've done on that.
Okay, thank you. I think wants to be minutes. You've got the.
Yes, Chair, just to let you know, I have to leave now for a corporate briefing, which I'm chairing. Conscious that you haven't got onto the debt recovery report, but if there are any issues that need following up, I will do that with Keith after the meeting. So,
yeah, thanks, Jan.
okay. Thanks, everybody.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we've covered that one pretty extensively. So thank you very much. Move on. You can stay in this if you want, but you can leave. Likewise, you can stay in.
Read the debt, so I've just. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. So moving on to item 6, the recovery update. Keith, with folks to with them.
This update normally will be before the committee in December. However, it's deferred until this month. The report, the update for the committee does have some figures in where they're available, which are reported as at the 31st of December. So within the report, there aren't really any comparisons with 31st December last time. The report normally reports at year end and half year. So what I've also got the figures here, which would have been reported as at the 30th of September. So two parts, if you like. The main report that's before the committee, it is a snapshot. It itemizes or lists the sundry debt, council tax, business rates, overpayments, and housing and social debt. The sundry debt, as you can see, was at the end of December a substantial amount past due, and also the amount that's not yet due. 23 customers who had invoice balances of over 100,000 at the end of December. There was an increase there compared to last year end. Since the end of December, those 23 customers, the debt has reduced to 22 million. There's an update by service area. Yeah, so it's a snapshot of what the position was at the end of December. Council tax, you can see there that we report on the collection rate. The collection rate at the end of December was 31.5%, which is down 5% on the same time at December 2022. However,
so far this year, we have been the second highest of the North East councils in terms of collection rates. So although the collection rate has reduced slightly, we are still performing really, really well. The business rates collection rate at the end of December was 78.7. That's up slightly from 77.3, which is what it was at the end of December 2022. We're not as high up in the benchmarking with other councils. The rest of the report on housing benefit overpayments and housing. I've reported on there, well, based on information provided by those teams. There's no further update available for them as at the end of December. If it will tell Chair, I can just outline the end of September figures to compare with September.
That'd be useful.
To that will tell. So sundry debt, September 2022, 25.5 million outstanding at that time. Was overdue. At the end of September 23, there was 39 million in total. 25.5 million was at that point overdue. Just over 13.5 million wasn't yet due. Customers at the end of September 2023 who owed in excess of 100,000. There were 16 customers. The total debt at that time was for those customers overdue was 13.5 million. Moving on, council tax. Council tax. The end of September 2023, the overall collection rate was 55.1%, which was the same as at the end of September 2022. The collection rate, particular to council tax support customers, within that, the council tax support customers only. At the end of September 23, the collection rate was 43.3% compared to 46.8% September 2022. The next part, business rates. Collection rate at the end of September 2023, 55.3%. Yeah, there's nothing further to report on. So,
thanks for that. I did ask in the briefing we get this extra figures so we can compare apples to apples. It's more easy to see the picture. Right. Any questions?
Well, yeah, I'm a little bit worried and concerned about the debt, for the housing, what collection of housing and revenue. And, what kind of impact that you envisage, and have you got a contingency plan? Because obviously the rents are going up. And, how do you envisage that, the collection rate will come further down? How you're going to deal with that? I know you probably can't answer it because you have to wait and see how it materialises. But I wonder if you could maybe, come back after you've given it a period of time to tell us how it's actually going, to see if it's getting any worse or better, or it's just stabilised, please? Thank you.
Anyone else? Rick? I'll let you speak in on the committee. Go on.
Okay.
Yeah, you do. Go ahead.
Thanks, Rich. Just hoping you can clarify something in paragraph 56. It says those in receipt of universal credit are in arrears of £484 on average, and those tenants not in receipt of universal credit are in arrears of £290 on average. Is that does it mean of those tenants who are or aren't in receipt of universal credit and are in arrears, which arrears of those sizes, or is it saying that those are the average arrears of all tenants?
I will need to come back because I'll need to go clarify that with my colleagues in.
Yeah, because if it's all tenants, it's a substantial arrears.
Yeah, good point. And we have the answer circulated to the committee. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks that very much, everyone. George and Megan. The second question, and it's on Nick's point. The thing is, that we are aware now that universal credit's all being moved over. And I've brought it up before, the transition period moving over now, when you see, the difference between the arrears, they'll be worse off with the benefits that they won't be receiving under universal credit. So that there again, I think we need to have, as the chair suggests, like a regular update on that as well to see how that's going to have an impact, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think what I want to establish is that you take lots of stages of steps, like you send reminders, second reminders, final notices for council tax or collection. At what point do you, if at all, charge the person for this collection activity? Do you impose a fine or anything?
Within council tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can understand first reminder, I might have forgotten, second reminder, third reminder, free of charge, but then our cost escalates.
Yeah.
So is there any punishment or something that's being given for financial penalty?
Well, council tax, similarly for business rates, the procedure very similar, but it's driven by legislation. So to start, everybody gets a bill. The bill is payable by statutory instalments,
yes,
rather than the customer electing to pay by instalments. It's a requirement that we issue instalments with a bill, 10 instalments or 12 instalments. Somebody pays their instalments on the due date or near enough the due date every month. We just send them up the bill once a year, nothing else. If an instalment is missed, then there will be a reminder note sent, which the content and timing so it's set out in the council tax and the business rates legislation. And there's no provision in the legislation to for any costs to be added on or extra charge to the customer. If the customer receives a reminder, brings it up to date on the reminder, just carries on as normal. If the customer doesn't bring the account up to date, the next step in the process, again set out in the legislation, would be that we would make a complaint for magistrates court, ask for a summons to be issued to what's called a liability order hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, at that point, when the summons is issued, we would ask the court for costs of £50. So summons goes out for the overdue amount of council tax or business rates, plus £50 cost. At that point, if again, customer pays, then that's it, finished. Don't pay, the summons will progress to a hearing in the magistrates court, where the court may make a liability order. At that point, we'll ask for a further £50 costs, so it's £100 in total. And it's opposed against that liability order. The court has made the liability order. That's when further enforcement action can be taken.
Thank you. Very comprehensive.
The costs up to that point can only be granted by the magistrates court.
And they are nominal costs. There have been no relation to the actual cost of the council.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions on number 6, the overdue debt. Adult services is by far the largest. Now it seems to be saying on note 1 for the explanation that the adult social care team reporting the number of people saying they can't afford their care due to the cost of living and several customers making partial payments because that's all they can afford. How big a problem is that? Is that £13.8 million worth of problem?
Difficult for me to answer for the adult social care team, but we see the volume of invoices that are within our team, see the volume of invoices that are being raised, and the value of those invoices, and they are substantial.
Are they increasing exponentially, you know, which is the suggestion here? Yeah.
Obviously, our colleagues in the adult social care team, the adult social care finance team, they deal with the clients day to day, but we have seen an increase in the volume and value.
Yeah. John, I think the last meeting, the one before, similar sort of answered that. My second question is the second highest total on there, not by much, is corporate resources finance. What's that? It's it's number 6. Overdue debt, 31st December.
It's yeah, that's a figure. I'll have the report back on the detail because that's, as I say, it's just a snapshot.
Yeah, it's just is that money that's owed to us, and I presume as it's under finance, it's money we've lent out that's owed to us or something. Is that how it works? I don't know. Does that seem reasonable?
No,
it's fine.
Thank you. On the same subjects, Malcolm, but also social services, that is a budget saving. Now, I wonder as well if we could have an update on this, because, you know, when this comes into effect, it's also going to have impact on how much we're collecting also, because, you know, there are some very, very vulnerable people amongst the people that we care for, and they're one of the targets, unfortunately. So I would like to see, you know, how we get on with this, whether the savings has been worth it or it's going to cost more to have, you know, to do what we're doing than what we're going to collect in, because if it doesn't balance, what's the point? Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
One last question, sir. Come back to the collection. So on item 14, you are saying point number 14, so the collection rate is 81.5%. So does that mean the rest is sunk cost? Council tax collection, overall in-year collection rate at 30 December 2023 is 81.5%.
Yeah.
So the remaining roughly 18.5% is never recoverable. It's a loss to the council.
5% of the annual debit has been collected as at.
So far.
Yes.
So far. Okay.
So it's not the final figure for the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I find is that 39/2020 was 55.2. That was, is it because of COVID, you think? So the previous years in 0.13.
Yeah. As I mentioned at the start, it's that figure, the 81.5 or 82% is as at the end of December.
Right.
Previous figure was the September.
Right.
Figure.
I mean, it was, remind us, what was the September 23 figure percentage? It was very close, it was 55, it was down slightly, I think half a percentage. It was all the same.
81.
85.1.
So they have another 3 months to collect more. It's collected on a monthly basis.
It's 55.1% at the end of this September 23.
Yeah.
So if you tell me well, it stays pretty steady.
The council's performance on council tax debt recovery is very good, and on housing debt recovery is very good, but it's not quite so good on business rates debt recovery. And it says at the end of paragraph 27 that it's due to a backlog in processing valuation office agency schedules and the issue with posting payments. Just wondering if you could tell us what's caused that backlog, what the issue with posting payments is, and what we're doing about the two things.
The valuation office schedules whenever a property is built or changed to it, that they require the rateable value to be amended. There's a report submitted to the valuation office part of the government agency. That report submitted by the council or maybe externally, but by and large by the council. At that point, we're in their hands until such time as they come back to say that the rateable value is this on a new property, or the rateable value has been changed from X to Y on a property that's been changed in some way. We're pretty good at submitting the reports, but if there is a delay in those reports coming back, and then towards say the end of the financial year, if we get to look at them, that's going to increase the annual debit. And if it's towards the end of the financial year, the likelihood is that arrears will carry forward into the next year.
So the backlog is
causing NCC payments for NCC properties that NCC has to pay rates on. The postings aren't often done till late in the year because they're done by a journal transfer from one fund to the rate accounts. So that can lead to it skews the figure a little bit, even though we know we're going to get paid, or the rate accounts will be paid.
So the valuation office is causing the backlog itself.
It can do,
yeah. And the issue with posting the payments, the county council payments, is an artifact of the fact that the county council is slow to pay its own business rates.
No.
It is, but it isn't. It's a process rather than having to.
It's internal
pursue.
It's
on the valuation office side of things. So my colleagues in the business rates team are meeting with colleagues from other local authorities and the valuation of this as a collective to try and raise concerns, for want of a better expression, with the valuation of this. I know that individual authorities have done with the valuation of this, but I think what they're aiming to do is, as a group of authorities, and I hope that may carry a bit more weight and may take the valuation office, or may make the valuation office take a bit more notice to monitor the problems as well, because I think a lot of authorities throughout the area through the northeast have been very similar.
Thank you. Nick?
I think just on that point about the journals, Nick, and the payments, it's literally an internal adjustment transaction. So it's not cash literally leaving one bank account going into another. It's a number on a piece of paper. And I think the other thing that might be causing problems with the VOA is during COVID, the business grant regime highlighted a lot of anomalies in the rating system. So properties that had previously been separated or properties that had previously been combined and things like that. And so that sort of caused a spike in the workload. That's probably a bit of a legacy from still the VOA are working through, because they're physically, I think often they have to send people out to do a physical inspection of a property and then do a report and then readjust the valuation, send it back to the council, and then it's open to appeal and so on. So it's sort of it's quite a complex process.
Okay, Alex.
It's just a comment, Chair, to just what's being raised. And I know there's people in here had or have businesses, etc., etc. I've been retired now for about 7 years, but prior to that, I worked for a small company on the front street of a town. And each year I had the pleasure of applying for discretionary rate relief, which we don't find in a debt recovery report, of course. And I used to fill that in. And when you put your postcode in, etc., you could find out who in your ward was actually getting discretionary rate relief. And it may come as a surprise, but in the ward of Sleekburn, only 3 businesses were paying business rates. 3. One of those has since closed down. We're not going back to the years of when the power station was there, for example, and the power station paid enough rates for the whole of Northumberland. Well, that's another story. It's when he would be able to keep the money. Never mind. I'm not sure that's the same thing today. And it's interesting, we've just had a report from Digital and IT where they actually tell you the wards of where connectivity is. I would love to see a list of where the business rates debts are. And we'd probably see the same at the top, Cramlington. Because that's where the industry and that's where the business is.
Yeah.
But perhaps it might help us determine when we look at these industrial sites, and I'm going to make one off the top of my head, West Hartford, for example, and you say, are we right as an authority trying to get business there, Ashwood, are we right trying to get business there when the ones that are there are the ones causing us all this debt? That it's the wrong site, and it'd be an additional arrow in what quiver to the board or what decision making, etc., etc. I'm just talking generally, Chair, just for conversation as much as anything else, I'll be honest with you. But it was interesting of the 2 reports where one compares and the other one keeps away from it.
Yeah.
And I know Sleekburn is not here. That's the point I made.
I mean, how easy is it to do a ward breakdown?
Oh,
How easy would it be to do a ward breakdown?
We don't hold information by individual wards, but by individual parish.
Just an observation.
Parish and town might be interesting.
Yeah.
What we don't want is to create loads of extra work dividing up towns and everything. That's
The 14 market towns,
Yeah,
yeah,
market
good
towns.
point,
Yeah.
good point.
Similar sort of theme. Business rates. I presume we still have the small business rate relief. A lot of business in Northumberland will qualify for that. However, we see a revaluation going through in business rates. I don't know if it's being carried out or it's ongoing now, but there's certainly a revaluation. Given that business rates are more and more important to this authority in balancing its figures, would you forecast any trouble, given that some businesses are going to have to pay business rates for the first time in their life? Others are going to see huge, well, potentially, and when I was in business, it quadrupled my business rates in 1992. They're going to see a large increase. And we already have this problem with business rate collection by the look of it. But as I say, it's going to be more and more important to this authority. Would you see any problems on the horizon, if you like, given that scenario, that we're going to see an increase in business rates for businesses with probably never paid them before?
How do you think we evaluate?
How long was this a student?
What's the multiplier, that's not set by us, and the limits for reliefs, mandatory reliefs, are not set by us, or I say us NCC.
So that might be a mitigation for that by the government, but it'll be the government's decision.
It is very difficult to.
I know what you mean, and it's a difficult question. I understand that.
It'd be the increase along with the.
You know, I'm not asking it to be mothership or anything, but it seems a fairly logical conclusion that if business, the only way they can pass it on is increase the prices. We're already seeing a huge problem with smaller businesses. We're seeing a huge problem with national businesses, not only the smaller ones. But if they start passing quite large price increases on, then it's going to just, it's just a recipe for disaster all over, as far as that.
There's a general election in the room.
Well,
Making all sorts of promises, weren't they?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you. Work programme.
Yes, program chair. Can I just clarify what we the housing regeneration report?
Yes.
It is going to the report, not more. The technology. It affects 3 wards in planning. And if it was to be something, it's still needed to do. That's that. The part work program is confirmed. Meet again in March, a fairly full agenda, got the update from advance financial performance and best commissioning and procurement, which is a report that John has for the previous meeting.
Okay, thank you.
that was good.
Thank you, yes. I did ask at the previous meeting, which I am absolutely delighted with, when the lady came from HR and gave an absolutely in-depth comprehensive report about, you know, people's illnesses, etc. I mean, it was absolutely brilliant, because I think, you know, everybody, you know, realises the implications of staff's welfare, and we appreciate that. So we're delighted with that. But I did also ask for one about apprentices as well, and I don't know where that's gone or what's happened to that.
Well, I'm going to talk about that before. That will be a separate report, like this. So they won't be covered by them when they come next time, but they are preparing another report specifically on apprentices, which will come to a future meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah, the apprentices issue was discussed in the HR annual report in September. The report that came to you last time was actually a supplement to that. So we need to go back to the original report and get some more detail.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Urgent business, none. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.